I thought I knew Frankenstein. He's basically this guy, right? Big green dude, bolts in his neck, grunts at villagers. Maybe he eats dogs? The Halloween pop culture icon. Well, it turns out I knew nothing. Rien. Nada. Reading Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, the Gothic Horror masterpiece, was like realizing I've been quoting a movie wrong the whole time. You know, how like
Luke, I am your father.
is actually
No, I am your father.
or that famous line from Casablanca, play it again, Sam, is really
Play it, Sam. Play as time goes by.
or topically, fucking Rachel Zegler, Mirror, Mirror on the Wall, who's the fairest of them all, is originally
Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?
Anyway, welcome back to my corner of the literary world, the messiest, I may add, and you're all welcome. This is Reading for Idiots, and today's no spoiler review is a masterpiece of guilt and regret and honor and some serious, oh no, what have I done-ness? That's right, it's Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Like, share, subscribe. Let's just jump straight in with the structure and the narrative. I had no idea that Frankenstein presents as a story within a story. I mean, like, what is it with Gothic horror novels and Matryoshka dolls of dread? Because Dracula was kind of like this too. That was straight up an epistolary novel. So the novel opens with this explorer guy writing letters to his sister, and this explorer goes up to the Arctic Circle, and while he's there, he sees a famished, exhausted, completely bedraggled man just like lying there on some ice, and he rescues him, and it turns out to be Victor Frankenstein. We find out about Frankenstein's story through the explorer dude's correspondence with his sister, but that's not it. Inside Frankenstein's story, which is inside the explorer's story that we see through his letters to his sister, inside Frankenstein's story, we get the story of the monster. This whole thing is like layered like a tragic Victorian cake. And this is what works so well about it. These layers create a kind of Chinese whispers effect. Are we allowed to say that? Anyway, the abstraction suspends our disbelief, because if you think about it, that's fucking crucial, because the story of Frankenstein is just bonkers. A scientist stitches together bits of cadaver and then reanimates the flesh, and the thing's alive, it's a monster. So the abstraction, the layers, plays a crucial role in suspending our disbelief, because it's no longer like, hey, so one day I made this monster. It's more like, you know, I met this guy who said he did this thing. Basically, you, the reader, aren't just directly hearing some crazy fucking story. Instead, what you're getting is a solemn first-hand account, which is the explorer's correspondence to his sister, about him meeting a guy who said he actually lived through the events. And it gives Frankenstein this eerie, documentary-y vibe. And I have to say, this choice, this Matryoshka doll of dread choice, is fucking inspired. Mary Shelley really knew how to sell a story. And the thing is, on top of that structure, you think you know the story of Frankenstein. Mad scientist, dead bodies, burning villages, loads of sobbing, roll credits. You think you know Frankenstein? Nope. There are so many twists and so many turns. Like, actually, if I had just thought a little bit about the book before I read it, I may have been able to anticipate some of them, but this channel ain't called Reading for Idiots for nothing.
I believe you.
Victor Frankenstein, not what I expected. The monster, definitely not what I expected. This story, the story of Frankenstein, basically took my ignorant expectations, turned them upside down, and drop kicked them into the abyss. And it's so funny. Like, in my, I read 34 books last year arrogance, I thought I knew what was coming. You know, like you're reading a book and you can kind of guess what's going to come next. Well, Frankenstein took turns that I didn't expect that were infinitely more tragic and horrifying. And the thing is, I was reading Frankenstein live. I'll put a link down below. Check it out. So you can see my reactions in real time, and I just had to roll with it. There is actual tension in Frankenstein. There is a real mystery in the story, and it's it's a page turner. I just wanted to carry on turning the pages, and oh man, there is some real heartbreak too that I just did not see coming. Let's remember that Frankenstein was written in the Victorian era, when Britain was king of the world. I'm the king of the world! But of course today, colonialism bad. Anyway, all the writers back then wanted to represent ideals. They were chasing these like Platonic ideals of whatever virtue. They wanted to represent these Platonic ideals in their characters, like beauty, strength, honor, duty, intelligence, just name it. So in that sense, all the characters are essentially archetypal, and we as the reader can very easily map ourselves onto the characters, or at least onto the traits of these characters, of the ideals that they represent. So everyone is Frankenstein, is like Frankenstein, or at the very least, Victor Frankenstein exhibits the traits that we have or we want. And Victor Frankenstein, well, he's charming. He is the epitome of a gentleman. He is an autodidact who is also fiercely intelligent. At the same time, he's peak pussy. Like at times, he's just such a coward. And just like thinking about it, I don't really think he fits into that mad scientist archetype. If anything, he's more like a tragic romantic hero type. And Frankenstein's family and friends are all paragons of loyalty and kindness and virtue and comedy and hell. Even the monster, Christ, Frankenstein's monster is just dripping in pathos. The thing just wants to be loved. He just wants to belong. He wants to earn his dignity. So Mary Shelley constructed, everyone who wrote in the Victorian era constructed their characters with these ideal standards. And so the fatal flaw is when the protagonist thinks they're lacking or is actually lacking a certain ideal. And when all the stats are maxed out with ideals, the one that is missing is very fucking obvious. So when they fail, because spoiler alert, they obviously fail, the weight of that failure is unbearable. It is failure to the max, failure as an ideal. So the reactions of the characters will also be like exaggerated, like, oh, woe is me. But that aside, like constructing a character by ideals is such a great way to build tension inside the character. So the character building structure kind of looks like this. Here's a bad example. Protagonist is a super athletic, super determined guy who is, the jock in the high school or whatever. And one day he gets injured. Boo, sad. And to recover from the injury, he pushes himself just as hard as he would normally push himself, and he gets more injured. And so the thing that made him so great is also the thing that led to his downfall, and now he can't ever play whatever sport he was playing again. Classic. You get the structure, right? Classic, hell, even tropey stuff. But damn, in Frankenstein, Mary Shelley executes it perfectly. So in Frankenstein, the characters are constructed using these ideals, and the fatal flaw is also like a max flaw. And when shit goes south, their reactions are like, oh, woe is me, end of the world. And so the failure, the weight of which is unbearable for the characters, that in Frankenstein comes in the form of regret. Frankenstein dissects forensically, emotionally, psychologically, in ideal terms, the anatomy of regret. Victor Frankenstein is racked with guilt. The monster is consumed by sorrow, and all the supporting cast are just caught and dragged along in the riptide of all of these heightened emotions. And yeah, the emotions are heightened and the reactions are exaggerated, maybe even overblown, but it doesn't ever get cartoonish or caricature-y. Mary Shelley somehow manages to keep all of that real and just real. And she can do this because of the Matryoshka doll of dread, that abstraction that she created with the story within the story structure. Because it really is on the level of, I made a decision years ago, and now my entire life and the lives of everyone I love are completely obliterated. It is that level of sorrow and regret. And the thing is, although not to that extent, I'm sure, I hope, although not to that extent, we've all kind of felt similarly at some points, right? And this is the fucking genius of it. The emotions are also ideals. We can map our emotions from the experiences we've had, although I hope not to the same degree. I sincerely hope not to the same degree. I have never made a monster out of cadavers and ruined my life and the lives of everyone around me, but I have felt regret and sorrow and guilt. And that is what makes these characters, this is genius, that is what makes these characters, even the monster, so sympathetic and relatable. Even though what these characters are doing is just so divorced from reality, Mary Shelley preserves a realness in the events of the book. And so Frankenstein is just brutal and surprisingly emotional too. It is the worst case scenario of just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do it. Okay. Now let's talk about the author, because Mary Shelley's story is fucking wild. At the very least, the origin story of Frankenstein is nuts. Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin was born in London in 1797. And I guess Mary Shelley was always destined for greatness because her mother was Mary Wollstonecraft, a proto-feminist and author of A Vindication of the Rights of Women. And Mary Shelley's father, William Godwin, was a radical philosopher and political thinker. Sorry about the accents, but basically, she was born into an intellectual pressure cooker, and you know what they say about Catholic girls, right? Well, actually, I don't know that she was Catholic, but just to mix metaphors here, the more you pull back a slingshot, the further the pellet flies, if you know what I mean. Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin eloped with Percy Bysshe Shelley of
I am Ozymandias, King of Kings, look on my work, ye mighty, and despair.
fame. Percy was incidentally good friends with original fuckboy poet Lord Byron. Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin eloped with Percy Bysshe Shelley when she was 16. Mary and Percy's life together was chaotic, to say the least. They traveled a lot. They lived in poverty, and there was a ton of grief. They lost multiple children. Plus, there was scandal and just the general romantic era drama fueled by Lord Fuckboy Byron. She wrote Frankenstein when she was only 18 years old, and it was published posthumously in 1818 because, you know, sexism. And this is the story of how she wrote it. Mary was hanging out with Percy and Byron and some other degen romantics with a capital R. They were hanging out in Geneva one miserable and stormy summer. Miserable and stormy because 1816 is known as the year without summer, thanks to a volcano that erupted the year before that completely messed up the world's climate. Mount Tambora, 1815. Thanks a lot, Indonesia. But seriously, thanks, because otherwise we probably wouldn't have had Frankenstein. Anyway, these degens, one dark and stormy night, bored out of their minds by Lake Geneva, challenged each other to write ghost stories. And apparently, Mary Shelley was unable to come up with one that night, went to bed, and had a waking nightmare. The vision of a scientist crouching over a body that he had just reanimated. Et voila! Frankenstein. Teenagers these days shake their ass on TikTok. Well, back then, Mary Shelley, when she was 18, she pretty much invented science fiction. Her other notable works include Valperga in 1823, and in 1826, The Lost Man, which is probably one of the first apocalyptic novels, plus tons of other short stories, essays, and travel writing. But yeah, Frankenstein is Mary Shelley's crown jewel. Literally, pun intended, one of the biggest literary flexes of all time. Mary Shelley died in 1851 at the age of 53. So, to wrap up, Frankenstein is not just some silly Halloween story. It is the haunted anatomy of regret. It is ambition turned sour. It is creating something you can't control and living or dying with the consequences. Frankenstein is a dark and tragic and surprisingly beautiful book that is way more emotional and philosophical than I expected. Mary Shelley didn't just write a story and invent a monster. She practically invented an entire genre. And she did it, living the life that she lived with a broken and still beating heart. Now, if you've been putting it off, read it and come back and tell me all about it down below. And if you have already read it, do the same. Like, share, family WhatsApp group, work Slack channel, subscribe. New videos every Wednesday, live readings on the weekend. And remember, we're all just messy little monsters trying our best. So just be nice.
Like, share, subscribe.